And altogether, there are about 317,000 satellite images, all on the order of 8 megapixels each. One pixel will comprise 4 to 6 bytes, depending on how it's stored. So the total storage, not too large here, it's about 14 terabytes. And the time to process it would be about 1,000 core days. The other project area, or the other area that we look at, are sea surface temperature fronts or gradients. So this just shows some fronts and gradients. This is our website for it. This is a satellite image where we've applied our algorithm to the sea surface temperature field, and all the little squiggly lines are fronts that it finds. And the algorithm is pretty computer intensive. It's a histogramming algorithm. And we apply that to all of those images that you just saw. Or not images, the archives that I just mentioned. This just shows examples of all the fronts that I found for 1988, 1989, and 1990. I did this a number of years ago, this particular one. And hopefully you recognize Long Island, and we're here. And this is what's called the shelf break. This is where the water the depth of the water slopes down a little bit, and then all of a sudden it falls off rapidly, and right there, often you'll find a sea surface temperature front. And you see Georges Bank here and other features, and they change from year to year. And this is just all of them plotted, but you could also calculate the probability. That is, you'd look at how many times is a given pixel, a frontal pixel, versus how many times it was clear. And then you can plot it like this. So this is from the same data set. And this is the probability of finding a front at any given location. And you see the shelf break. You see current up here, Newfoundland current, and the like. From another satellite, we took all of the front data and derived probability fields and then normalized them. And we normalized them by, at every pixel location, we take all the pixels within 4 degrees of it, 4 degrees around it. We get the mean, subtract the mean, divide by the standard deviation, and normalize it. And what's amazing are you see these bands everywhere. And these were unknown 5 or 6 years ago, and we're seeing these. So this is the sort of thing I want to do with the data. We have a processing suite that we use where we pre-configure the data, pre-process it, and then we apply a gradient operator and our edge detection algorithm, and that puts data out. We pump data out of that. And the bottom line is that for every input byte, we essentially put 2 bytes out. So we're generating a lot of data. And these are the archives that we're working on with that. Again, the HRPT one I mentioned to you before, 317,000 images. And to process it through that set of algorithms would be about 1,000 CPU days. And we have others, AVHR GAC, it's another type of data, another data source. MODIS, SEVERI, which is a geostationary satellite, collects an image every hour of the Earth disk. VISIR is another one. The bottom line is the total of all these is around 500,000, 500,000 files or images. And it would take me about 2,400 days, core days to process it. So the CPU demands aren't that bad, but the storage turns out to be a problem. Here it's only 50 terabytes, but then you double it when you make more, et cetera. But recently we've started messing around with model data, and we have one data set that we're looking at, which is just 3 months of data. Each image is 128 megapixels, and there are 2,000 images in the 3 months, and that's a terabyte, but that's only the surface temperature. And if you're interested in more fields, for example, for this particular data set, 1 year of the model output would be 2 petabytes of data. One of the things that we're really interested in doing is putting all of a year's worth of data, for example, online, and using that to teach as a virtual ocean. So a student could go in and take a cruise, or drop an XVT, a measuring device, or look at a particular area, but you have to have the whole thing online and readily accessible. And that's just one data set. The bottom line is I have access to about 5 max, not a big thing. Where they have 26 cores. For the past month I've been running it, I did 100,000 retrievals using about 12 cores. I reserved some cores for just regular stuff. And to complete the retrieval of all the data that we have would take about 60 days at 12 cores, and to process all the archives through the front gradient algorithm would take about 200 days of the capabilities that I have now. So I'm probably way out of time already, but I do have one other thing I could show. Should I go on?
Very quick one.
Well, it's okay. I'll be really quick. We have an algorithm, a retrieval algorithm, that will get you sea surface temperature at 375 meter resolution at the surface. That means that every observation of sea surface temperature is separated from the next one by 375 meters. These data exist globally. This is an example of one of the images. I'm zooming in. Actually, I should go back just one step. We're in this area here, and I zoom in on this, and then I zoom in on this area, and this is what it looks like at 375 meters. And the temperature gradient here is an astounding 10 degrees Kelvin, or 10 Kelvin, I'm sorry, in 1 kilometer. That means that if you were on one side of it, it could be 60 degrees Fahrenheit. You go a kilometer away, not even just a little bit beyond the other side of the arts quad, and it's 78 degrees. That's an astounding change. And this just shows the same data, similar data, and you can't see it very well, but you can see the structure in the ocean. The bottom line here is that there are about 0.5 petabyte of data is the original archive, and then I'd like to process all that through to get the 375 meter stuff, and it would take about 2 core years. Anyway, it's cool data. Sorry it took so long. Wasn't very flashy, was it?
It was fun.
Great, thank you, Peter. I appreciate it. Thank you. Maybe we can hold questions till the end, and so think if you got something for Peter, we could ask it at the end and ask him to respond to it. At this point, I'm going to introduce Ying Zhang, who's assistant professor in the College of Environment and Life Sciences, and she's got her presentation that will be ready very quickly.
Thank you. Oh yeah, sure. Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to introduce myself because I'm relatively new to the campus. I'm an assistant professor at the Cell and Molecular Biology. It's my 2nd year here. My research is in the interdisciplinary area of computational biology. So here is a capsule of what I do in my lab. I try to connect all kinds of biological information from molecular information to biological networks and try to study the interaction of biological entities. In this case, I focus on microbial species. All of my research is fueled by the next generation sequencing of biological data. So from these pictures, you probably already notice that the data I deal with is very, very complex in terms of it comes in a variety of formats. It has a lot of individual files. Every molecule could take up a different file of different format. And it has large volume. The data could range from several kilobytes to maybe like terabytes of data. And the relationships between the different entities are very complex. So with that, I want to say it's not just the phenomenon of what I'm dealing with. It's actually the whole biological sciences we're facing such a problem. So in this picture, you would say that the red line shows the pace of development of our hardware storage. And the blue, darker blue here is prior next generation sequencing, which is older technology that's relatively slower. With the onset of the next generation sequencing, which happened earlier this century, we can say the growth of biological data largely outpaced the growth of the storage space we can handle. So it's a big problem. How do we solve this problem? In my mind, there are several key points we have to really work on. One is we need novel approaches for data storage and data retrieval, because we all talk about we have so many data stored in a disk space. But in our personal experience, many times, lots of time is not spending on computing the data, but spending on querying and feedback and get the data stored properly. So how do we make it more efficient? How do we share the data more efficiently? That's a big problem. And